Hello everybody. Today we are going to discuss Ways with Words, Nightwalkers and Mystery Mongers, Sense and Nonsense at the Edge of Science, found in Ways with Words. The author is Carl Sagan. Carl Sagan was an American astronomer he also was a planetary scientist, cosmologist, astrophysicist, astrobiologist, author and science communicator. We begin with Carl Sagan's Nightwalkers and the Mystery Mongers. In the first paragraph, Carl Sagan talks about a master conman who cheats and tricks people. Now he is named Alexander of Abonaticus. He lived in Greece during this 2nd century AD. He made money by cheating and deceiving people. He tricked people. He was a pretentious person who showed some strange behavior in front of people. What he would do is, he would rush to the marketplace half naked. He would shake his long hair. And thereafter, he also announced that he was sort of a person who was a manifestation of God. He started to run through the site of the temple, and close to the temple he discovered a goose egg. Then this was sealed up with a baby snake. The snake was long and it was a sort of obedient one that he took through the site of the temple, and there he made its face just like a human by clothing it deceptively. And people were so surprised by seeing this serpent with a human face. And using this, he suggested that, he was a person from man of God, and he would find a solution for unsolved questions. So all the people had to do was to submit questions in sealed envelopes to get an answer. But what he really did when he was alone was that he would lift up or maybe duplicate the seal, read the message, then remake the envelope and attach a response. And thereby the number of visitors grew day by day. And because of this, even in those times, he earned close to $100,000 a year. So this was how Alexander of Abonaticus cheated people. Alexander of Abonaticus was a master conman. Another person Carl Sagan mentions is M. Lamarckine. Now, he was a pastor, and he also exploited people using the spiritualistic medium. Even now, the religious texts are certain places where people feel deeply in awe, in respect of the pastor, or have reverence to the person who speaks these words. And because he confessed in the latter part of his life that, it was not possible to read and communicate with the spirit. Only later he did that. Till that time, he would read sealed envelopes. He would suggest a solution for the problems. Then he would find lost objects, and he would also be able to communicate with the spirit of a dead man. So like this, what he also did was he would read these instead of breaking the seal, and he would read the questions using a bright lamp. So he would take the envelope, face it on a bright lamp, and try to read the questions. Or he would smear lighter fluid on the cigarette lighter fluid onto the envelope, and thereby the questions would sort of stand out. So thus, he also would be able to find out lost objects, then Only later, in the later part of his life, he confessed that all these were mysterious and fraud activities, and that he just wanted to exploit his friends and relatives who, possess greater love for the dead men. So this is basically how con men take advantage of people, because people believe in such things. Then in the next, such fraud activities are based on simple tricks and strong self-confidence. Moreover, most of the clients are not skeptical. They accept whatever is propagated by these con men. Now, in this particular book by Charles Mackay, the title of the book is Extraordinary Popular Delusion, The Madness of the Crowds. Here, Charles Mackay talks about how people are exposed, or how he exposed certain people that were otherwise deceived, or they were cheated by other people. So he discusses things like prophecy, faith healing, haunted house, crusades, and the influence of political and religion on hair and beard. So you see, this text, warns common people against getting trapped by mysterious activities. So most of these things in those days, people were very scared of, especially haunted houses, then faith healing, which is there even now maybe, prophecy and such things. So Charles Mackay in this book exposed the madness of people. The title of the book was Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds. Again, in the next paragraph, he talks about levitation. Now, what is levitation? Levitation is basically the action of raising or lifting a person or thing in the air without any physical support. These are tricks or acts done by certain people to attract crowds, and they try to prove that they are men of God. So the supporters of levitation believe that people can be raised and they can move through the air. But Carl Sagan says that if levitation was possible, then it had to be scientific, and this is presently still not proved by science. Of course, you've got anti-gravitation motors and all that. You must have seen videos of those things, but presently levitation is still not possible, and this is presently not yet proved by science. And so only if you can prove that you can do levitation, or people can do levitation by themselves, then only this fact should be believed. This is what Carl Sagan says. That is, if levitation was possible, it would be scientific. Then he talks about the precognitive experience. Now, what is precognitive experience? This is basically the ability to understand matters beyond the senses. This actually, many precognitive events were reported from different parts of America. People sometimes experience this death of a loved one, possibly that person communicating once again, or communication with a long lost friend. Here Carl Sagan says that this precognitive event happens only because of this emotional intensity with the subject, and it is not extrasensory ability. So some people cash in on this and say, I have my dead relative came back and talked to me about these things and all those things. These are basically, according to Carl Sagan, they happen only because of the emotional intensity, and this is not at all an extrasensory ability. In the next paragraph, he talks about flying saucers, or UFO, unidentified flying objects. Now, again, here also Carl Sagan says that this is also a false concept and it is not a reality. Just because you see a light in the sky, it doesn't mean that we are being visited by aliens from another planet or visitors from another planet. This strange light in the sky may have originated because of maybe a flight of luminescent insects or some unconventional aircraft or some light patterns. Of course, there are several UFO cases that were reported in 1947 in the US, but there is really no physical evidence for such cases. And in 1977, NASA actually declined an invitation to study the UFO report. So, which almost proves that, there is nothing called the flying saucer or unidentified flying objects. Now, he recalls in the next paragraph, he recalls an experience that happened in a restaurant. There were many people gathered in the sidewalk and they were pointing to the sky and they saw a sort of UFO, an unidentified flying object. But Carl Sagan actually returned with a pair of binoculars and clearly showed that there was no UFO. Possibly it might have been an unconventional aircraft of NASA, the space agency of America. The people's excitement and astonishment suddenly became ashes. And, what happens is people here are, the observers become biased and they become more interested in extraordinary stories and they don't want to know whether it's true or not. So the majority of the observers get disappointed in the act of Carl Sagan. So when Carl Sagan said that this was not true, many people were disappointed. But this is generally human tendency they would like to believe what is not there. Now, there are many unscientific beliefs which has already been dismissed by science, but people still try to propagate it as true. There are certain things, they try to propagate this through social media, especially what we call the doomsday scare, that is the end of the world, or that aliens are visiting our planet and possibly taking one or two people as experiments. Then this, in the picture, the crop circles, as if an alien spaceship landed at this particular place, and that, the Apollo moon landing was just a trick. All these things, what happens is that they try to propagate all these things through social media. Now, this is a mistake, a great mistake, because the success of science depends upon public support. So many people or most people don't know much about science and technology. So they are not capable to, discuss or, talk about scientific issues. This is where the pseudoscientist can easily deceive people and make money. So we must understand the theory behind it. We must understand the truth behind it and not go behind pseudoscience. Carl Sagan says that, scientists are also human beings. They also have passions, but they never succumb to their passions. What they do is they try to find results in a combination of theory, intuition, and brilliant creativity. So this is what scientists do. They try to analyze things. They try to find the theory behind it, the intuition behind it, and thereafter the brilliant creativity. Apart from that, it also requires skeptical scrutiny in every step, and every step has to be documented. Every step has to be looked upon to check the veracity, to check the truth. Therefore, Carl Sagan says that scientists has to work with theory, intuition, creativity, and critical scrutiny. Thus, they will never mix their passions with scientific experiments. So, scientists, they are human beings, but they do their work properly, with theory, with intuition, with creativity, with critical scrutiny, and they never mix their passions with scientific experiments. The success of science depends upon the self-correcting character of science. That means they must test a valid idea. So science can be wrong in certain places. So they stop that and then they look into the new theory behind that. So the character and beliefs of the scientists are irrelevant. Scientists do not consider any argument from authority. They propagate effective scientific thought through the schools and media. So they try to promote truth and not just hearsay. So many beliefs take place not on close examination. They are generally, what Carl Sagan says as anecdotal. They depend only on the validity of the eyewitnesses, and most eyewitnesses are not reliable. So the success of science depends upon this brilliancy of the self-correcting attitude of science. Whereas people say something, that is hearsay. A person says something, you hear that, you believe that is hearsay. Whereas in science, you have to see to it that there is truth behind it. So Carl Sagan distinguishes between prejudice and PostJudas. Now, prejudice means the rejection of an idea without a close examination. So if we reject an idea or a thing after a close examination of evidence, it is called PostJudas. So Carl Sagan says that PostJudas is the basic requirement for acquiring knowledge. Now, most of us, we have prejudice. As soon as even if a person who is maybe handsome or looks to be cunning or smart, immediately we have a prejudice. We sort of like the person, but maybe that person, after some time, we will understand that the person is maybe, in our terms, maybe a fake. So this is what we do. We immediately accept that without even a close examination. So this is what prejudice is. Prejudice means rejection of an idea without even a close examination. We don't even think about it. We accept it as on what we call a face value. But PostJudas will be if we closely examine the evidence, then only we'll be able to understand, and that is PostJudas. So Carl Sagan says that PostJudas is the basic requirement of acquiring knowledge. So when you understand something, you must critically analyze it, and then only it will be a part of science. This is what Carl Sagan says. So this critical and skeptical examination is the method of everyday practical matters as well as science. So when we buy a new car or when we buy a used car, we are particular about many things. We want to know about the warranty, the car dealer, the working conditions. We even take a test drive. So what we have done is we have a close examination. In the same way, if we meet a person, there also we should have a close examination. And we should not believe, suppose he talks about certain borderline beliefs or he has certain ability, let's say. So immediately you should not believe him. Specifically, there are many people who say that they can foretell the future or they can read palms, and they try to trick you. So these are things which you must be aware of, and you must PostJudas, that is, you must actually think about, critically examine it before trusting that particular person. So there are several findings in modern science and mathematics that are more compelling than the doctrines of pseudoscience. So science is entirely different from pseudoscience, and it's more intricate and subtle, and it evokes a sense of wonder. Being true is the hallmark of science. So what happens is that there are so many things that we need to understand in science, but we generally do not understand these things, primarily because we are not very interested. According to Carl Sagan, we must critically examine these things, take a discretionary tone of it, we must understand about it, and then only we will be able to succeed in science. Thank you very much. Hope that it was useful for you.